Welcome to episode 4 of How to Become Subhuman, the manufacture of risk. Last week in Sexualizing the Victim, we looked at how institutions turn vulnerability into guilt, how care became surveillance. Today we go further, from guilt to suspicion, from suspicion to classification, until a human being becomes a risk category. At the end of October 2025, Sussex police published a Facebook post about an 18-year-old man found sleeping in a van with a 17-year-old girl, both teenagers, both above the age of consent in England and Wales. Yet the headline called him a registered sex offender and announced that he had breached a sexual risk order, SRO. No violence, no coercion, only the bureaucratic vocabulary of danger. Registered risk safeguarding. The girl, they said, was not aware of his interim order and she was given the appropriate safeguarding advice. That single sentence performs a public exorcism. It transforms intimacy into offense, adolescence into suspicion, and protection into humiliation. A sexual risk order, or SRO, is a civil measure under the Sexual Offences Act 2003. It can be imposed on someone who has never been convicted of any sexual crime. A magistrate merely needs to believe that the person has done an act of sexual nature and may pose a risk of harm. Once granted, the order can restrict movement, contact, even internet use, and breaching it can mean 5 years in prison. A registered sex offender is someone convicted or cautioned for a sexual offense, required to notify the police of address, travel, and associations. But in practice, these are two different categories, very different categories, that bleed into each other. Once your name appears in the system, you enter the same moral architecture, the same databases, the same stigma. You became part of what could be called the infrastructure of suspicion. In the post, there is no mention of what the young man actually did. No context, no history, no consent. The point is not truth, it is performance. The institution must be seen to protect and to appear protective. It must first fabricate a victim. So the individual is isolated not only from society, but from his own story. Every fact that could be humanized, or that could humanize him, his age, his circumstances, is stripped of narrative and turned into pure symbol, a headline, a warning sign, a trophy, or an institutional virtue. The police do not simply report, they curate fear. The legitimacy is to appear on the public sphere, isolating the context. Why the police moralizes desire, then? That's the question. Why does the Sussex police, and by extension the British state, care so much about regulating desire and morality? Because desire is unpredictable, and unpredictability is bad for governance. The modern police operates not as a guardian of law, but as a safeguarding bureaucracy, a moral manager of risk. When budgets shrink and crime statistics become political, the easiest victory is symbolic, the policy of potential danger. Facebook becomes the new courtroom. The feeds replaces due process. Each offender removed from the streets post is an advertisement in authority. In a moral economy of visibility, purity is proof of competence. Sussex, with its mix of conservative towns, migrant populations, and universities, is a perfect laboratory. It is the frontier where youth, sexuality, and social anxiety intersect. The fear of misbehaving bodies, foreign, queer, intoxicated adolescents, become the justification for endless control. To police desire is to police territory. To control morality is to control visibility itself. That is why the institution must continually produce examples to show that it still knows what decency means, even when no one else does. This logic is not totally abstract to me. When I sought help after a dissociative crisis, the institutional reflex was not to care, but containment. Instead of being treated as a patient in shock, I was processed as a potential threat. Psychiatrists were summoned to the cell not to treat me, but to decide whether I should be detained further in a facility for mad people. I was not medicalized, I was criminalized within medicine. Psychiatry became the costume for punishment. My vulnerability was recast as danger, my confusion as intent. Every symptom of trauma was rewritten as a symptom of the violence. In both stories, the 19 and 17-year-old teenagers and mine, there's a perform of order of offenders. Each word sounds reasonable, but together they erase the possibility of innocence. Once applied, the label replaces the person. Your entire existence becomes an appendix to a bureaucratic preoccupation. The institution's prestige depends on that erasure. By stripping away complexity, it transforms lives into examples. What survives is a diagram of moral hygiene, one protected, one offending, and a system that fits on their division. This is not right. So, what does it mean to live under a regime that polices not what we do, but what we might become? Perhaps the real danger is not the act itself, but the apparatus that denies danger for us. Between the accused and the condemned now stands a new creature, the risk subject, untried, unhealed, and already erased. This is not safeguarding, this is moral administration. And this is how one does not become subhuman. We have to be very careful about this because this is about lack of resources of the police. This is about certain sadistic practices inside the police, but also this is about a form of governance to prevent through a new Victorianism and an invasion of privacy possible crimes of other people. The thing that in the meantime, and unfortunately, this is the thing with, I mean, I don't know the details, but we're talking about like a 19-year-old kid having consensual sex with a 17-year-old girl and caught in flagranti and being humiliated. Those kids are traumatized for life. What are they doing? Or what is the police doing? What is the state doing? This is neo-Victorianism at its worst. Next episode, we are heading into what we were discussing before, how this criminalization turns very quickly into not only a legal figure that is complete, it's an umbrella that defines a person. This is not the topic that we're going to touch next time, but into pathologization, into medicalization. We're going to explore that. See you next week. Next week, see you in a couple of days, Wednesday.